Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 48, Fran Gets Mugged. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Maxwell and Cece are very excited to lend a piece of William Shakespeare's notebook to the Metropolitan Museum for a fundraiser. Their excitement is interrupted by Fran, who is fighting with Brighton about his new eyeglasses. Maxwell agrees with Fran that Brighton needs his glasses and asks Fran to run a few errands while she and Brighton are out. Maxwell voices his disapproval of Fran's plan to walk through Central Park, but Fran responds that in her 4-inch heels, she can step over anything. Unfortunately, Maxwell is right. Fran gets mugged while in Central Park. The mugger stole her purse, which contained her red Cadillac lipstick, Maybelline Extra Lash mascara, and Maxwell's piece of Shakespeare, which Fran mistook for a fancy schmancy shopping list. Fran and Brighton handle the mugging as best they can. At the time, Brighton puked, passed out, and peed in his pants, and afterwards, Fran is afraid of the world outside her door. Cece tries to smother Fran with a pillow when she learns that the Shakespeare page was in Fran's purse, and Maxwell only intervenes after the police call saying that they need Fran to identify the suspected mugger. NYPD Jew Detective Schoenfeld tells Fran that the mugger was assigned community service, commenting that she could use a man around the house. That hits a nerve with Maxwell, who throws him out of the house, explaining that Fran is not the docile damsel in distress she appears to be. Maxwell takes Fran back to the park to help her overcome her fears, and they run into the mugger, who apologizes, returns the Shakespeare, and offers to buy them tickets to the Shakespeare Festival in New Jersey. Fran and Maxwell have a wonderful time at the festival and seem to be about to kiss when they learn that the house has been robbed and apparently cleaned out. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
Nope, you've got it.
Thank you. All right. Would you like to take us to scene 1?
Yes, so we open this episode in Maxwell's office. Maxwell's at his desk, and Cece and Niles are also there with him, and they're admiring what we learn to be a piece of Shakespeare's notebook. And apparently there's some type of, is it gala?
It's a fundraiser.
Fundraiser. And Maxwell's lending this scrap of Shakespeare's notebook. And, he even says it himself. It makes me feel damned important, doesn't it? And
exactly.
Niles, says, "Should I let out the inseam of your trousers, sir?" But again, Cece in her enthusiasm again says some not so.
She puts her foot in her mouth.
Yeah, she says, "Thank God your uncle croaked and left that to you."
Exactly.
And then, of course, after she gets a look from Maxwell, she goes, sorry for your loss. It's classic Cece.
Exactly.
At that time, Fran and Brighton walk in, and they're in the middle of an argument, and Fran's threatening to take Brighton to Loman's and make him sit in the husband's chair with her purse in his lap. It turns out that it's time to go get Brighton's glasses, and he's not wanting to go with her. And Fran says, he's so vain for, not wanting to get the glasses. Then, of course, in classic The Nanny humor, she picks up an invitation, looks at it, says, "Oh, the invitations look divine. Black guy optional." And of course, she's looking quizzically at that. And of course, Maxwell corrects her, black tie, Miss Fine.
Right.
But anyway, she obviously needs glasses. But Brayden's explaining he doesn't want, the wiry glasses and people teasing him. Here comes Urkel. And again, we pan to Maxwell, who is wearing glasses, wiry glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And so Brighton immediately, says that, of course, it looks good on, his dad.
Right.
And Cece, once again, I guess this is her attempt to take Brighton's side.
Yes.
Or at least to go against Fran. But, don't make him wear glasses. He's already short and underdeveloped. Aren't the braces enough?
Exactly.
And, of course, not helpful, Cece. And so Niles looks at Fran and says, "I'll hold her down. You tie her tubes."
Right.
So anyway, Brighton ends up yielding. He's going to go with Fran. And then there's this discussion, as you mentioned in your summary. Maxwell offers the town car. Fran says no, it's a nice day. They're going to just walk through the park. Again, she's wearing 4-inch heels so she can step over anything. And everybody else is kind of like left at this point, but Maxwell, as he's leaving, also mentions, well, if you don't mind, then there's errands on the desk. And he leaves. So Fran goes to the desk. And of course, she's kind of muttering to herself, what's the butler for then?
Right.
She picks up a piece of paper. She mentions Hamlet of Denmark. Why couldn't you have just said, and I didn't write down the...
I have it.
Okay.
I have it. Hamlet of Denmark? Why can't you just write a small Danish ham? Montague's Capulets? Well, is that regular or extra strength? Oh, I guess it's whatever I want. It says right here, as you like it.
Exactly. So we, as the audience, know she has not picked up the list intended for the errands. In fact, she has picked up the Shakespeare scrap.
Correct.
Do you have anything to add to this first scene?
I just want to say, make one clarification in a comment. Brighton doesn't just yield. Maxwell says, Brighton, you're going, that's that. And Fran says,
yes, that's
there.
correct.
Fran says, there, your father has spoken. And Brighton's like, you said he doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. And Fran's like, oh, this is the other half.
Yep.
And then the only other thing I wanted to add is that with the comment about how she's wearing those 4-inch heels, she says, and I quote, to me, a wino is just a speed bump, end quote. Like, as if in her 4-inch heels, she's tall enough that she can step over anything, which to me is just like interesting logic. So.
Yep. No, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So can you take us to Central Park?
Sure. So we're in Central Park and Brighton is wearing his glasses and he's looking around. He comments about how everything's so clear now. And Fran, tries to do the whole nanny parental reassuring thing about saying how she loves how he looks in his new glasses. And he comments about how he's noticing the fine details that he never noticed before. And he looks at Fran and he says, how old are you? And she's like, oh, take those off. They make you look like Urkel. And so while they're in the park, this man in a trench coat walks up to them and opens his trench coat, showing them, not the audience, what's underneath. And Brighton and Fran are like staring at him, and Brighton comments, wow, look at that thing. Is that real? And Fran's like, you're acting like you've never seen one before. You've got one, your father's got one. Here, put it here. Let me see how heavy it is. And she, her hand goes into the jacket. And of course, everyone's thinking, like, what the heck is she doing? This guy's clearly flashing her. But it turns out he's just selling, knockoff Rolexes. And she decides to buy one. And then the guy leaves and they continue walking and they find a bucket of KFC. And Fran comments on how people are such pigs. Oh, it's just the dark meat. And like, as they're in the park, this guy runs up to behind Fran because she's wearing a purse that's, over one shoulder and it's like kind of like on her side, sort of behind her. And he grabs her purse. Give me your purse. And he's wearing a pantyhose over, or a stocking, I guess, over his head. And there's sort of a tug of war and he gets the purse. Fran has the strap and he runs off. And Fran and Brighton realize they've been mugged and they sort of start running around like headless chickens. They actually like run into each other at one point. And Fran kind of is like, well, at least we've got witnesses. And everyone clears out because they don't want anything to do with this. And Brighton tries to take charge and he puts his hands on her shoulders and says, Fran, let's not worry. I can handle this. And again, with the nanny humor that we see throughout the series, he handles it by fainting promptly. And so Fran, of course, is upset. She tries to cradle Brighton. I don't know what to do. I can't even think straight. And this woman who we've never seen before comes up and says, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to Bloomingdale's? And Fran kind of like drops Brighton and's like, go over to Lexington, over to 59th, and the frozen yogurt in the cafe is not to be missed. I tell you, if I hadn't just been mugged, I'd join you. Oh, and then she like realizes that she's been mugged and goes back to Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
It's this very like chaotic.
It is
Um,
chaotic. I mean, at one point, what do we do? Wow! Before they start running around
right.
with their head cut. Yeah, yeah. And there's like surprisingly like a lot of people when this mugging happens.
Yep.
And then they all just, as you said, they flee once they start saying, we've got witnesses. And they're like, nope.
Exactly. No, you don't. You thought you did, but you don't.
Yeah. So the next scene, we're in the living room and it's obviously the aftermath. They've gotten home and Fran still has the purse strap with her. And,
Yeah.
Maxwell's trying to comfort her. She's sitting on the couch and she's like, they say after it's gone, you can still feel it. And she's motioning as if she could still feel her purse.
Right.
Um, and again, they're trying to calm her down and, she's like, I'll have to get all new credit cards and, the driver's license. And she's lamenting because apparently in that driver's license she looked like Jacqueline Smith.
Right.
Um, and, she's just, talking about all those things. And then Brighton, I believe, is the one who first calls the guy a creep. And again,
Yes.
he's kind of like got that bravado, like, if I see that creep again, I'm going to take care of it. And at first, Fran's like, oh, don't call him a creep. Deep down, good. I don't know what she says, but,
She says, "Don't go calling him a creep. Deep down inside, there's goodness in everyone." And then she like
yes.
turns on a dime.
Yep, because she realizes her Cadillac red lipstick is in that, and it's the only one. It's discontinued.
Yeah.
And we learn, so she immediately says, I want that freak to fry. And Maxwell's trying to comfort her, like, oh, there's plenty of red lipstick. And she's like, not like that. They outlawed that, like, what is the
Yeah, she says, "No, never the same. They outlawed the dye. Damn Food and Drug Administration. What are they doing in cosmetics? My mother wore it for 50 years. Her kids came out normal."
yes, and she has this very not normal expression on her face to
Yeah.
just emphasize that. At this point, Maxwell starts saying, talking about she has a wide-eyed naivete,
Yes.
and she takes, exception to this. She's like, the only reason my eyes were, I'm not naive. The only reason my eyes were wide were because of my Maybelline Ultra Lash mascara, which was in my purse. So
Exactly.
yet another thing she has lost because of this mugging. And there's a knock at the door, and oh, it must be the police. And Fran's following Maxwell, like, I, told you not to call the police. I'm not going to talk to them. The door opens, um, and again, who we later learn is the NYPD Jew, as they called him,
I love
Detective
that. Sorry, I think
John
that's so
Gale.
funny.
She immediately, when she sees him, she goes up to him. I'm the victim, and kind of like partly faints into his arms, but
Exactly.
still eyes open. And again, so the detective now is talking to Fran and saying how she's so naive, and she's like, yes, it's my greatest downfall. So like totally different demeanor exchange from what she just had with Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Maxwell takes note of this, turns to Niles, and it's like, isn't that just what I said? And Niles, in his dry kind of commentary, says, it's all in the delivery, sir.
Exactly.
Um, and the detective asks Maxwell, are you the one who threw up and fainted? And Maxwell's like, no. And he points out Brian, it was him. And it's kind of interesting because even Brighton kind of sidles up to the detective when he
Mm-hmm.
asks, like, oh, it was you? Yes, sir. And the detective asks Fran and Brighton, well, did you get a look at him? Do you have a description? And Brighton immediately is like, no, it happened so quickly. He had a stocking on his face. And Fran jumps in. It was a no nonsense, sheer, silky
Toe,
foot,
sandal foot.
misty taupe something. It was a very long name. And also, is that it? Nope. He had a run over his left ear.
Right.
So he's like, okay, that's something for me to start with. And as he makes his way to the door, again, he's like openly flirting with Fran.
And
And
she's
he
openly flirting back. We should throw that in there.
yes. And he kind of puts his jacket aside so that we see like his gun,
Mm-hmm.
on his hip. And, crime runs rampant in these streets. And I guess your wife must be feel
Must
so
feel so
safe
safe
to
having
have
you around. Yeah.
I'm not married. And then like I think he like reaches out and kind of touches.
Her chin.
Yes. And oi.
Oh, it was more plaintive. Boy.
Yes. Um and then of course Maxwell's not too pleased. Oh please. She's swooning his arms just because he's wearing a uniform. And Niall says, shall I fetch the little wings the stewardess gave you, sir? That was for Grace. Then why is it in your jewelry box? Thank you, Niles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
I just want to say that's not the only time Niles embarrasses Maxwell in this episode. Um, and the other thing I want to say is like from the very beginning, there is clearly some sort of rivalry between Maxwell and Detective Schoenfeld.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Fran starts reacting to him, Maxwell says to him something along the lines of, "Don't you have some paperwork to fill out or something?" And that's when Schoenfeld is like, "Are you the guy who threw up and fainted?"
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, their rivalry continues. That's all I want to add.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say next scene.
sure. So I believe we're still in the living room,
Mm-hmm.
and Fran is sitting on the couch, and she's in her pajamas. Um, and the TV's on, and we hear the like broadcaster saying, "A simple purse snatching turns deadly tonight on a very special blossom." And so like we sort of Fran's like watching TV. That's not what she needs to hear right now. And then we see, Maggie and Gracie are kind of watching her, and Maggie's concerned, saying she's going to go talk to Fran. But then the like snack box that was sitting on the couch falls, and Fran, starts beating it with. Frankly, I couldn't tell what she had in her hand. Was that a golf club?
I don't know. Some type of stick like thing.
Well, whatever it is, she starts beating the poor snack box, and Maggie says to Gracie, "You know what? You go. You talk to her." And so Gracie is in her ballet uniform, and she goes over to and says, "Fran," and then the two of them start screaming because they were startled. "What's the matter? What's wrong? You scared me." Um, and Fran, more to herself than to Gracie, says, "So this man has my address and telephone number. Lots of guys do. Do they ever call?" And Maggie tries to like help, I guess, the situation by saying that she's going, "Why don't I take Gracie to ballet just this once?" And Fran's like, "Yeah, just this once, that's great." And so she starts walking the kids to the door. Now, kids, don't think that just because I was mugged, I'm going to be afraid to face the world outside the door. And then immediately, as they like walk out the door, she turns on a dime from being very calm and rational to go, 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 stay low to the ground, serpentine, serpentine. Watch out for that scary guy. That scary guy. Oh, not since you get in here. Like she's totally frantic and totally paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
And that continues. She asks Niles if he, got the stuff, and he says, "Yeah, hairspray, breath spray, and pepper spray. What do you say we switch the labels and give them to Miss Babcock?" And Fran's like, "I was victimized. I don't have time to watch you torture Miss Babcock." And then she hands him the bag back. Take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and she sort of like heads back towards the living room, and Brighton comes in. He says that he feels really bad that he didn't protect her the other day, like yesterday. And Fran does the nanny thing and tries to make him feel better again and says, all you did was pass out, puke, and pee in your pants. You were in Central Park. You fit right in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing the mental anguish that this purse snatching has caused poor Fran and also
Mm-hmm.
poor Brighton. Do you want to add anything?
No.
Would you like to take
So,
us
yeah.
to the office then?
Yeah. So we're in the office. Maxwell and Niles are in there, but we pan over to look into like the hallway. So Cece and Brighton walk by the doorway, and Cece's going, "Ask yourself, punk. You feeling lucky?" And Maxwell's like, "Well, what's all that about?" And Niles dryly says, "The expert's teaching Brighton how to repel a man."
Exactly.
Um, and then uh, Niles asks Maxwell, "Shall I take the Shakespeare down to the framer?" And Max is like, "I thought you already did that." It's like, "No." And then Miss Fine, that's for Maxwell. And uh, because I think they're talking about who had been in there. Um, and Niles says, "Oh, you're jumping to conclusions, sir." And then, but in a second, he also goes, "Miss Fine." And she comes in, and Maxwell asks, did you see a very ancient document?" She's like, "Oh, Cheetah Rivera's resume." And they were like, "No," he's explaining it's the Shakespeare. And she's like, "Okay, let's calm down. Let's retrace our steps." And, she starts recounting, like Bright and I came in, we were arguing, Miss Babcock said something stupid, and Niles said that zinger about tying her tubes. I'm still laughing about that. And they like share a quick moment laughing.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me to take I think she mentions taking the thing, and she goes, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
Tell me Macbeth is something you eat with McFries. And of course, Maxwell's like, "Please tell me it wasn't in your purse. It
Right.
wasn't in my purse. Are you lying?" Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I told you to take the bloody town car." Um, and then he goes on and says, "That lasted 350 years before it met you." And
Right.
Fran's, trying to scramble because, he's explaining how it was supposed to be at this gala or whatever, the fundraiser. And she's like, "Well, maybe nobody shows up," because, he's worried about being like totally embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Cece walks in at that time to exclaim that it's sold out and the Princess of Wales is coming. "Diana, I love her. Can I go?" This, of course, is Fran, and he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you can go and explain why you're toothless." Is that what he said?
Yes.
Toothless. Okay.
Toothless.
Um, and Fran's like, "I just thought it was a piece of fancy stationery. I spent like 2 hours looking for um I think a pizza place called Two Gentlemen of Verona."
Correct.
And this is when Maxwell explains to Cece that Fran had taken this scrap of Shakespeare and it was in her purse. And immediately Cece goes, "I'll kill you." And she takes a pillow. And again, there's a couch in Maxwell's office. She throws Fran on the couch, and then she's over Fran with the pillow. Fran's like kind of kicking her legs. Cece's,
Fran's kicking and pushing and like
yes. And
fighting for her life. Right. Um, Bernadette, I think we've lost Bernadette, but I will continue until she rejoins us.
again,
Oh, there you are. You went silent for a moment.
oh, where did I go silent?
I said that Fran was fighting for her life, and then there was nothing.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Um, Maybe that was the internet. Sorry, listeners. But basically, yes, Fran is fight. Cece's going right there with her. And this goes on for a while until Niles says, "Sir, aren't you going to stop her?" And Maxwell says, "I will." And the implication, of course, being, but not right now.
Exactly.
And then, though, that's when we get news that, they've caught someone, they've caught a suspect, and Fran's the only witness. And so that's when Maxwell intervenes and says, "Stop, we need her alive." And,
Exactly.
as soon as the pillow comes off, Fran gasps. And again, we need to take you down to identify. I don't want to, like, what if he comes after me, like, and kills me? Then he can stand in line. And then Fran's kind of upset, like, you care more about, a scrap of paper than me. No, of course we care about you. And then this is when they start kind of slowly advancing, now let's close the door. And so they kind of chase her, and she clings onto a side table, and eventually, like, Maxwell takes one end, Niles takes the other. They lift it up, and they're taking her out with that. And Fran's saying to Niles, "Okay, in my obituary, make sure they use the picture of me in the green jumpsuit from Puerto Rico." Like, I was tan, I was happy, I had a really good hair day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything you wanted to add to that scene, Debbie?
I just want to comment that it's more of that physical humor that we've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take us to the lineup.
Yes.
So Maxwell and Fran are at the police station with NYPD Jew Schoenfeld. And yes, that's how I'm going to refer to him. And, he tells Fran to take a look, look at the guys. There's a bunch of guys in the lineup. And Fran says, can number 4 push his hair back? So NYPD Jew Schoenfeld says, push your hair back, number 4. And Fran's like, now you're talking. Is that him? No, but doesn't he look better? Like, what a stupid exchange. And Fran basically says, like, it's hard for me to tell because the guy was wearing a stocking at the time. And so all of the people in the lineup are told to put a stocking over their head. And Fran takes a look. Oh my God, it's him. The sheer elegance, all day beige between the control top and the cotton crotch. And of course, the 2 men who are standing with her have no idea what she's talking about. She's like, it's number 2. And so number 2 kind of looks up and sees it's him, and darn. And so Maxwell asks what would seem to be the obvious question, where do we recover our property? And Schoenfeld's like, what? Maxwell's like, the items that were stolen. And NYPD Jew Schoenfeld's like, oh, this is your first time, isn't it? And he laughs and he walks out. Hey, Jim, wait till you hear this one. Mm-hmm. And so Fran and Maxwell are talking, and she comments about how her aunt always says life is like a box of chocolates. And Max was like, that's from Forrest Gump. And she's like, and they paid her nothing.
Mm-hmm. Was it aunt or grandma?
Oh, it could have been her grandma. Sorry.
Some
relative. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
No.
All right. Would you like to take us to the living room?
Yes. So we're back in the living room, and Fran's still trying to cheer up Maxwell. They're sitting on the couch, and she's like, okay, let's just try to watch something on TV to take your mind off of things. And of course, turns it on, and there's like this jingle talking about brush up your Shakespeare. Flips the channel quickly. And next is Zeffirelli's, did I pronounce that correctly? Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
And again, this time, I believe Maxwell turns it off or takes it away, and Fran's like, hey, I was just about to see Romeo's tush.
Yep.
And basically at this point, Maxwell's just done. He's like, get thee somewhere else.
Right.
And again, though, Fran's still trying to cheer him up. On the bright side, it could have been me you lost. Don't try to cheer me up.
Exactly.
I have half a mind. No argument there. And again, she's like, hey, I'm not a weak woman. But at this time, who shows up? NYPD Jew Schoenfield, as you called him.
It just sticks in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Fran said it the first time and the
Yes.
look on her face, it's just delightful. Continue.
Yes. And immediately she's back to how she was acting last time with him. And I believe Niles is there too, because once again, Maxwell's kind of talking like, I've never seen her so docile.
Uh-huh.
How does he do it? But anyway, the detective explains that, I have to tell you that we have to let the guy go. He's on community service. That's how the system is. We lock him up. They let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And, like Fran's distressed by this news. And so the detective's like, it looks like you need a man around the house. All right, that's it. This is Maxwell finally interjecting. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
there is a man around the house. And of course, Niles. Oh, Niles.
Yep.
I'll lay out your pajamas, sir. Would you like warm milk or cocoa?
Yep.
That. Thank you, Niles. You're fired. And second of all, there's nothing sweet about her. She happens to be brave, confident, and gutsy. She's not this, you've made her a simpering, whimpering child. She's, I don't have everything verbatim, but she's the woman.
This is not the woman I know.
I know, and ... No.
Exactly.
And then, the detective in response is like, because then he also kind of is dismissive towards the detective, like, why don't you just run along and write tickets or whatever?
Right.
And the detective's like, fine, I'll start out by writing a ticket for the limo parked out front in the red zone. Fine, write a ticket, write 10, I don't care. He leaves. And then Maxwell notes that he feels bad for whoever's limo it is parked out there.
Right.
Apparently it's not his.
Exactly.
Do you have anything to add to that scene?
The one thing I want to say is, Fran's reaction to finding out that the guy is going to do community service is that not only is she distressed by it, but like, meanwhile, I ate a couple of Bing cherries at the A&P and I was wrestled to the ground like squeaky foam. Like, she's saying it's just not fair.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I wanted to add.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take us back to the park.
Yes.
So we're back at the park and Maxwell's taking Fran and he's like trying to help her, get back on the horse, which is the expression he uses. And she says that she never understood that because if she falls off a horse, she's calling Jacoby and Myers.
Mm-hmm.
And, so they're in the park and the comment is, Fran says, meanwhile, that little talk Miss Babcock had with Brighton seems to be working out well. And we see Brighton saying, are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? And the guy turns around. It turns out it's a mime who clearly was not talking to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone walks by and Fran shouts that it's, oh my God, it's the mugger. But it wasn't. And like Max is like, you're seeing the mugger like at every turn. And she's like, well, that guy really looked like him. And as they're walking, then they do run into the actual mugger. And Fran screams, the mugger screams. And the mugger's like, don't be scared. Don't be scared. And Fran's like, I'm not scared. This man is an expert at Thai Babylonia. And Max was like, that's Taekwondo, is fine. And the mugger is like, I'm sorry. I swear I've never stolen anything before in my life. I've been dying to tell you, but I'm not allowed within 40 feet of your house. And Fran's like, why? You're single and Jewish? And the guy's like, see, I'm down on my luck. I can't pay my bills. Well, get a job, says Fran. They repossess my car. Take the bus. And of course, like during this time, like Maxwell's between her and the mugger and she's sort of like behind him. And the guy continues, I had to move in with my mother. And Fran's like, give him a 50. And the guy's like, I don't know how to make it up to you, but I thought I'd start by returning something that looked really important. Fran, of course, gets super excited thinking it's her lipstick. It's not her lipstick. It's the Shakespeare. And the mugger says to the two of them, say, if you're a Shakespeare fan, there's a festival in New Jersey. I'd be honored if you let me treat you to 2 tickets. And Maxwell, again, having better common sense, is like, I don't think so. And Fran, of course, is like, oh, Mr. Sheffield, the kids will be away all weekend at tennis camp. And besides, we would pass by the Donna Karen outlet in Secaucus. We'll go on Saturday, not too close because it's very talky and they spit. And the mugger's very excited. Bless you, thank you. And he runs off. And Maxwell says to Fran that he's not going to schlep to New Jersey to clear her mugger's conscience. And Fran doesn't really take that. And then the guy in the trench coat is heading their way, and Maxwell says, "Oh no, this guy's coming towards us." And she's like, "Oh, he's just selling Rolexes. I should get one for my father. Hey, you come here, open up." Well, guess what? This time he was not selling Rolexes. He was naked. Fran is scarred for life.
She screams.
Yes, which I think is the appropriate reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything you want to add?
All's well that ends well.
Yes.
And something got nothing. I'm trying to decipher my notes.
Yeah, so you're right. Fran says, Maxwell says all's well that, one of them says all's well that ends well.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's what, no, because she says all's well that, as my, again, grandma, aunt, whatever says, all's well that ends well. And Maxwell's like, that's from Shakespeare. And she got nothing.
And again.
Yeah. And again, she got nothing. Anyway, the next scene, it's at night. And obviously, Fran and Maxwell have just seen, are getting back from New Jersey, seeing Hamlet. And, they open the door and they're talking about, like, they're a little, like, giddy. How would you describe it?
I'd say they're buzzed.
Yes. They've had a good night.
Yes.
And Fran's mispronouncing everything because I didn't catch how she wrote it, or said it, but the Dom Perignon, she said something else. Do you have it?
She said Don Corleone.
Yes. And like they go inside and they don't turn on the light. It's still dark. And oh, Miss Fine. Oh, whatever. Oh, Fran.
Yeah, so he said, he starts by saying, "It's good to have you back, Miss Fine. I missed you." And she says,
Yes.
"Oh, Mr. Sheffield, is that you talking or the bottle of Don Corleone?" He corrects her. And then he says, "Oh, Miss Fine, there's a beat, Fran." And she says, "Mr. There's a beat, Max."
Yes. In between there is a oh whatever somewhere. But Mr. Max and then we get an almost kiss. Kind of have a moment. They're leaning in. Then we heard some muffled grunting. Yes. And oh no, they turn it on. Niles is tied up in the middle of the living room and everything is cleared out. Not any, but I think is it the lipstick that's with Niles?
Yes. It's tied around his neck.
Yes. So she's like, "Oh, thank God he left the most important," or whatever. What was the phrase that she used?
The one thing that can't be replaced.
Yes. And then immediately, of course, Maxwell says, "Niles." Oh, yes, Niles. So they're trying to start helping with Niles, but Cece comes in and she came as soon as she heard from the alarm company.
Right.
They start asking, "Oh, what about the Monet?" Fran's like, "Oh, you're right. My earrings." She runs off to look at that. Cece says to Maxwell, "I'll untie Niles," and sends him off to deal with everything else. And of course, so Niles is still tied to the chair. And Cece just gets kind of one of those maniacal laughs going. And as she's looking down on him, and then she just like looks up, "Thank you." And that's how we end the episode and season 2.
Exactly.
With an almost kiss between Fran and Maxwell. Then Niles tied up to a chair with Cece maniacally laughing.
Exactly. It's sort
Do
of
you have,
unsatisfying, isn't it?
do you have anything to add to that last scene?
I'll just say that Fran, once the light gets put on, because Fran's the first one who notices the like muffled sound of Niles trying to get their attention. Um, and when the light goes on, she says, "Oh my God, what are the odds the one night we went to the theater?"
Oh,
And
yes.
Maxwell's like, "I'd say the odds are pretty good when the mugger gave us the tickets."
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say, though, that, like, again, like, everything's gone. That is
It's
not a one-man job.
no,
And
no, it was not.
certainly would take more than a couple hours, I would think. But anyway.
The only thing that was not gone is the piano because it was too big to move.
Mm-hmm. And Niles and the lipstick and the one
Correct.
chair that he's tied to.
Yes. Um, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have any kind of overarching things you want to talk about before we get into our shticks?
I do not. Do you?
Not particularly. So, let's jump into favorite fashion. Was there anything in particular you wanted to discuss this week?
So I actually like some of the things Cece's wearing.
Oh,
Per-
that's a change for you.
yeah, I mean, she basically is wearing the same. I can't remember what she's wearing in the first scene, but like the rest of the episode, she's wearing the same outfit, just different colored shirts. Black pants and a bright colored shirt. I just like when she's wearing, brighter colors. So like the
Mm-hmm.
purple shirt she's wearing in the last scene, you know, the arms are sort of sheer, but it's a button down shirt. I like that. In the scene where she's trying to smother Fran, she's wearing a blue silky button down shirt. I also like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also comment on um, Fran's theater attire. She's wearing like a black dress with like a scoop neck and it has something around the neck. It's very pretty. Um, is there a fashion you want to talk about?
I just wanted to check with you. So, the outfit Fran's wearing at the beginning, when she comes into the office and later when they're going through Central Park, I feel like we've seen it before.
We have.
Okay.
That's from the episode The Playwright.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about that. I was like, I need to figure out which episode that was from. Um, but yeah, that's the episode where Fran's forced to go on the date with Jeffrey Needleman and
Mm-hmm.
Brighton goes out with Brooke. Fran was wearing that exact outfit to pick up Brighton from school.
Yeah. And so I've mentioned this before, but I do appreciate that they actually have her wear some of the stuff she's worn before because that's just a little bit more realistic.
Agreed.
So, but yeah, any other fashion you wanted to discuss?
I'll just mention what Maggie is wearing in the very, very brief scene we see her. She's wearing like a white, I think, button down shirt under a pink, like a pale pink dress. I kind of like it. It's a little bit juvenile, but I like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting too because, like, like obviously Gracie's wearing her ballet outfit that's also pink. Like, they were pretty matchy in
That's
some.
true. Um, I think just back to your point um, about how Fran rewears outfits. Fran's pajamas we've seen before as well. We saw them in the Schlepped Away episode where the Sheffields
Ah,
got stuck at
yeah,
Fran's parents' house.
yeah.
So
Now that you say that, that rings a bell.
yeah, no, you're right. I agree with you. It's nice when when it's a realistic thing that a character's wearing the same clothing
Mm-hmm.
because not everyone's constantly building a wardrobe.
Nope.
Um, so yeah,
Okay. So shall we move on to notable New Yorkers?
sure. I will be honest, I did not pull every single Shakespeare reference that was included in this episode because there were a lot of them.
There were a lot.
Um, William Shakespeare comes to mind.
Yeah.
We've talked about him previously, a very famous playwright, wrote many, many famous plays, including Two Gentlemen of Verona, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Hamlet. I'm just listing the ones that were mentioned in the show.
Mm-hmm.
All's Well That Ends Well. Did I mention Two Gentlemen of Verona?
Yep.
Um, I feel like there were other references, but those are the ones that come to mind. So
Mm-hmm.
he's written a lot of very famous plays.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Suffice it to say.
Exactly.
Uh,
They go ahead.
I was just gonna say in that first scene as well, we get a reference to Urkel.
Yep.
Uh,
Steve Urkel from Family Matters, um,
exactly.
who, according to Wikipedia, was originally planned to be a one-time single appearance character, but then
Oh, I didn't realize that.
he eventually became like the most popular character and like the star of the show, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen the show, so
Oh, I have. I have.
that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Um,
the Metropolitan Museum, that's a reference to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, also known as the Met, which was founded in 1870 and according to its website has over 5,000 years of art from around the world.
mm-hmm. Bill Hurt was mentioned.
Yeah, we've talked about him before, I believe. He's an American actor who is known for his roles in Body Heat, which is where he came up previously, and Children of a Lesser God, which also came up previously on The Nanny. He had an active stage career, and he was in a variety of productions of off-Broadway Shakespeare's. So
Mm-hmm.
that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know if you wanted to get into like Rolex, KFC. Those are pretty well-known brands.
They are. I didn't actually include them, but good points. Lomans, which we've talked about previously.
Mm-hmm. Bloomingdale's mentioned as well. Like
Did we talked about Bloomingdale's before?
I would
I
have, I assumed, but maybe not.
I I think we must have. It's a very famous department store in New York City.
We have talked about Jacqueline Smith before, I believe.
We have American actress and businesswoman who is known for developing and marketing her brand of clothing and perfumes, as well as her role in Charlie's Angels.
Now, I didn't look this up, but is that Cadillac red lipstick a real thing or just made up?
I tried to look for it. I didn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when I search for Cadillac red lipstick, I get like a number of results, like for
Mm-hmm.
ads for Cadillac red lipstick and images. Um, but yeah, I couldn't find anything specific.
Okay. Maybelline Ultra Lash mascara.
I believe that's a real
Yeah, I mean
mascara, but
Maybelline for sure real, but I just didn't know.
um, yeah. So there is such a thing as Maybelline Ultra Lash mascara. You can just a quick Google search and you'll see lots of results.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
I'll jump in while you're looking. Blossom. We've talked about previously. It was Mayim Bialik's sitcom from the late 80s and early 90s. I've watched every episode of that series. There was no episode about a deadly purse snatching, just in case anyone was curious. That's not to say it didn't cover, serious topics. And actually, a total side note, they actually did towards the end of the series have an episode about one of like the students bringing a gun to school, and like that was about as like serious as it got. Nobody got hurt, thankfully, but like there were no deadly purse snatchings.
Mm-hmm. So definitely there's a reference to the movie Dirty Harry. Um, when we see, Cece and Brighton walking down the hallway, ask yourself, punk, you feeling lucky? Um, and again, I think they misquoted it, but that's like the common misquotation from
Mm-hmm.
Dirty Harry.
I didn't realize that was quoting something, so good to
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Cheetah
Just
Rivera. Oh, sorry, I was going to
no,
keep
go
going.
ahead.
Cheetah Rivera. I don't think we've talked about her before, but I feel like she might have come up. Anyway, American actress, dancer, singer, known for her roles on Broadway. She was actually the first Latina to receive a Kennedy Center honor. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Um, the Princess of Wales is a reference to Princess Diana,
Mm-hmm.
who was married, um, who had married Prince Charles, so Queen Elizabeth of England's son. She's the mother of Prince Harry and Prince William. She and Charles divorced in 1996, and then she died in August 1997. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Forrest Gump.
Yep.
1994 American film based on a novel by the same name, which is about a kind-hearted but slow-witted man who unwittingly influences major events in American history. That's according also to our friends at Wikipedia. Let me know when you want to jump in.
The Zaffarelli's version of Romeo and Juliet. Did I pronounce that right? I keep questioning myself.
I truly do not know.
Uh,
So I will go with whatever pronunciation you want to use.
Right.
That works for me.
I don't know. Yeah, Zaffarelli, whatever. It's like he made a movie, Romeo and Juliet, in 1968. Mm-hmm. I know I had to watch it freshman year of high school in English class. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I think we watched the Leonardo DiCaprio version.
Oh, interesting.
I think, but I don't know. I don't even know when that came out, so maybe I'm totally wrong. Oh, actually,
the 90s.
It was. I just Googled it. It was 1996. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure we watched the Leonardo DiCaprio version.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But yes, we also had to watch a film version of Romeo and Juliet in ninth grade. So, you jumped over it. When Fran puts the television on and you hear the song "Brush Up Your Shakespeare," that's not just a jingle. That's a song from Kiss Me Kate.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Fran references the A&P. That was a grocery store chain that was founded in 1859, and it was the largest grocery store in the United States between 1915 and 1975. It was ultimately liquidated in 2015. While it was known as A&P, its formal name was the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. And that's all according to our friends at Wikipedia.
I'm trying to see, was Jacoby and Myers the one we talked about before?
We did, but I pulled it anyway. From their own website, they call themselves America's leading full-service consumer law firm with offices throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm. There's also a reference to you talking to me. Again, another quote from a movie, this time the famous quote from the movie Taxi Driver.
Correct.
And then there's a reference to Yoko Ono.
Japanese artist, peace activist, singer, and songwriter known for marrying John Lennon, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Squeaky Fromme. She was an American criminal who was part of the Manson family. She tried to assassinate President Ford in 1975. She ended up with a life sentence, and she was paroled in 2009. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Wow. They reference Monet at the end.
Artist, yes, very famous artist.
Yes.
Don Corleone is when Fran mispronounces Don Perignon. Don Corleone is a character from The Godfather. That is according to our friends at Wikipedia as well.
Okay. So, any others on your list?
I'm checking, but I don't think so.
Okay. There were quite a bit.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, numerous Shakespeare references throughout.
Correct. Which was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, let's see here. There is some Yiddish cop.
I didn't think there was that much, but
not much, but there's something.
So schlep.
Yep.
Comes to mind. Maxwell even says to Fran, to borrow from your vernacular, I'm not schlepping to Jersey. Mm-hmm. And he does use it correctly. Schlep, it's a trek. It's a painful, arduous journey. Mm-hmm. Like I had to schlep to the grocery store, for example. And the other one is when Fran is explaining what happened with Shakespeare, she thought it was fancy schmancy stationery. Fancy schmancy, I believe, is a term she's used before. Actually, I think she'll use it again. I think she might just use it again. When she talks about how it's such an honor working for a fancy schmancy family. It's extremely or excessively fancy. It's like unnecessarily fancy.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was Yiddish.
Frankly, it just sounds Yiddish to me. Schmancy.
Okay.
I didn't actually look to see the etymology.
Okay, because I mean, I used and heard that before growing up, so I didn't know.
Um, let's see. I'm not actually. It might not actually be Yiddish, but to me, it just sounds Yiddish.
Hmm.
According to Reddit, it did originate in Yiddish,
Oh,
but I'm not quite sure how reputable that source is. Um,
grain of salt.
yeah, so according to Lexico, which is powered by Oxford, um, its origin is from 1930s as fancy schmency, which would be a reduplication of fancy after words of Yiddish origin such as schmuck or schmear.
Hmm,
So see,
interesting.
did I miss any?
I don't think so.
Oh, excellent. I'm always worried that I'm going to miss something. And then you're going to be like, Debbie, what about this? And I'll be like, oh no, I have no idea what we're talking about. So far,
Mm-hmm.
so good. Um, 90s nostalgia.
Mm-hmm. Um, again, there's, just whenever Niles is offering to switch the labels and give it the various sprays to Miss Babcock, Francis take a picture. And again, back then would have been camera, not the convenience of your cell phone.
Right. I'm going to go with the old cars.
Yes, and specifically this time we get an old police car, like stock footage.
Mm-hmm. Um, I have two others. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
an? So the first is the New York City crime wave. And this is something I think we talked about previously. During the 1990, 80, the late, like the 80s and 90s, New York City was known for having a lot of crime. Um, Thankfully, that is no longer the case. I mean, there's still crime, but it's lessened, shall we say, despite what the newspapers seem to indicate. And then the other one is during one of the like transition scenes, we see the New York City skyline and you see the Twin Towers.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yep. Um, Again, with like, I guess when they're trying to watch something on TV and they're flipping channels, again, these days you're much more likely to just turn on a streaming service. So you would have more control over your
correct.
options rather than just relying on what's on at that moment.
Correct.
Um, I mean, I'm trying to I I'm trying to consider whether there would be any difference if you had a scrap of Shakespeare's notebook today in terms of first of all, there's no security or anything with it. He just left it on his desk. But that might just be, again, plot point. So may not be a difference.
Well, I know like one of Shakespeare's folios is in a library, I believe at Dartmouth, and like they'll let you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
is my understanding.
Oh, interesting.
Um, I mean, do they just like leave it out for everyone to touch and manhandle? No, but
Mm-hmm.
something tells me like if it's like a private collection, like this clearly was, the security is up to the holder. And maybe it was Maxwell's. It was sort of Maxwell's fault for leaving it on his desk unattended.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, I guess thinking back, Niles was supposed to take it to the framer, but still, like, didn't seem like a great place to put it.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah.
So future fun.
Yeah.
So just because you made me think of it, you're right. The Dirty Harry reference, which I didn't realize was a reference, but the way you said it made me think that in a future episode called The Hockey Show, where Fran briefly dates a New York Ranger, um, she says to him at the end of their interactions, ask yourself, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Mm-hmm.
And he does not. There, I won't go into the details. There are red high heels involved, uncleaned underwear, striptease.
Whoa.
It's a fun episode. So we'll talk about that later. But you just made me think of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Two, Brighton, I don't think ever wears his glasses ever again.
Oh.
So that's a discontinuity point. Three, as we saw, Fran was mugged. But in season 5, Maxwell gets mugged and actually gets a little bit beaten up. So like
Ooh.
Fran's mugging was far less violent. Um, and then I guess the bigger point, um, when we pick up in season 3, the series continues as if the mugging and the robbery never happened.
Oh, really?
Everything's back where it was at the start of at the start of season 3. Everything's back the way it was, which also means that there's absolutely nothing about that moment that was shared between Fran and Maxwell.
Aw, darn.
So not to disappoint everyone, but like it's as if this episode never happened.
It was all a dream.
Pretty much. It just like never comes up, and like the fact that Fran got mugged is not even like referenced when Maxwell gets mugged. And frankly, what gets stolen from Maxwell is worth far more than Fran's makeup. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Yeah. So that's the future fun that we have in store.
Yeah, well, as mentioned, I mean, or we may not have, but this is the last episode of this season. And I feel like overall, it felt more than last season. Like last season, you and I discussed how we felt like it was kind of out of order,
Mm-hmm.
the last 2 episodes. This, I could see, kind of leaving it with um, a moment between them and then like Niles strapped to the chair with Cece maniacally laughing. It felt a bit more of a season ending episode, kind of.
Yeah, but
At
then
least
like they don't
compared,
do
at least
anything with it.
compared to last. Yeah, yeah. So I would have expected something to kind of pick up with then season 3. So it'll be interesting when we actually get there, since you mentioned that there's not really a reference to this.
Yeah, I mean, we start season 3 off on like a very high note, and like the house is totally put back together, and like there there's no reference to the fact that Fran and Maxwell basically went out on a date, even though they're not
Mhm.
calling it a date.
But they're very flirty.
Exactly. Nothing's mentioned. So
Fran, Mr. Max?
exactly. Um, so yeah. I guess it's time to rate the episode.
Yes. And it is my turn.
I love when it's your turn.
I know you do.
It makes me happy.
I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I liked that moment between Max and Fran at the end. And I even liked the moment with Cece maniacally laughing while uh, Niles is still tied up. Um, yeah, I mean, compared to, I think also it's like, compared to last week's.
Please, compared to last week, anything would be fantastic.
So, um, so yeah, what about you?
You know, I kind of struggle. I mean, I liked this episode, but it's not my favorite. It's not one that I go out of my way to watch. I don't like how disjointed it is between this episode and season 3. Um, I I don't like one thing I was thinking when I was rewatching it today was like how nice it would have been for, the NYPD Jew to come back and like date Fran for a little bit. Like he seemed like a perfectly nice guy, but like we never see him again. She does the other future fun. She does go out on a date with a different police officer who makes 3 appearances on the series. Um, but I I think I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay.
I can't make myself give it anything higher, but I also don't think it deserves something too much lower. So we're gonna stick with a 4.
That's
It's
fair.
fine, but not my favorite.
That's all good. And again, we're always subject to change too, me included.
Right.
Make up the rules here.
It's so fun being all powerful.
Yes, because again, since this is the end of season 2, we're going to do a season wrap up
Yep.
next time. And, you know, when we look through the entire season as a whole, we may adjust our ratings accordingly.
Exactly. All right. Unless you have anything else.
No, I do not.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll wrap up season 2 before moving into season 3 with episode 49, Pen Pal.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.